it's an addiction. Like, it's not nothing you just turn around and turn away from and just be okay with it.
Football players tend to hang up their boots in their mid-30s. That's usually the cutoff. Anything earlier is considered odd, anything later is remarkable.
I would definitely say there's a noticeable trend during the last years that we see players retiring much later. Still, there's many players that retire early.
There are outliers like Marta and Cristiano Ronaldo playing at the top level past their mid-30s and keepers continuing into their 40s.
E poi la vera verità è che io ho sempre giocato, sì, un po' per ambizione, ma molto per passione.
We've called upon 3 people to help us understand why some footballers retire exceptionally early and others exceptionally late. Julia Simic with her personal story of early retirement.
When I reached a certain age, with 28, 29, I could just not play pain-free anymore.
An expert's opinion.
I'm a sports scientist working currently for FC Victoria Berlin, and I'm also working as a strength and conditioning coach for the German national teams.
Ciao ragazzi.
And then there's this old Italian keeper you might have heard of, who just can't quit the beautiful game and is still playing at 44. The oldest active male player as of 2022 is Japanese striker Katsuyoshi Miura, who is still playing professionally at 55. He shows what's possible even for an outfield player.
I think there's many more factors which play a higher role than the position of field players that play a role into the retirement age. I wouldn't say that there's really a difference between a striker or a defender, for example.
Usually, goalkeepers tend to hang on the longest, proven to the most ridiculous extent by the oldest registered female football player ever, 66-year-old Australian Lorraine Peel. Or, as she's known on TikTok, Groovy Nanny Granny. She was a goalkeeper, perhaps not at the highest level, but still testament that they do tend to play longer.
Even if the training might be harder during the week, the demands of the games are much lower for the goalkeepers. But also in my experience, I've seen that the goalkeepers always fit in the group of players who live the most professional lifestyle. I can't really tell you why that's the case.
The old adage goes that goalkeepers age like fine wine, but if you've won it all, why keep going on into your late 30s or even mid-40s? Some players are simply obsessed with football, and in order to continue, they have to move with the times.
E infatti quando vedo lui, quando vedo Donnarumma, quando vedo Courtois, quando vedo Maignan adesso, così, vedo dei portieri che mi piacciono tanto e mi piace vederli, ecco, perché posso imparare sempre qualcosa di nuovo, anche adesso che ho 44 anni.
With late retirees, there's often an insatiable hunger to learn, to keep the flame burning, and to adapt to the modern game. And that's not just selling off NFTs.
È cambiato molto, secondo me molto più bello, e probabilmente se gioco ancora è proprio perché cambiando queste regole mi hanno creato uno stimolo ulteriore per potermi divertire e potermi migliorare.
By the way, Buffon is talking about the back pass rule that was changed in 1992 when he was coming through the Parma Academy. That's how long he's been around, and plenty has changed, including his role on the pitch.
Sì, è molto più bello secondo me, sei più coinvolto coi piedi, puoi fare anche delle giocate coi piedi che possono risultare molto fini e molto propositive, possono aiutare magari la squadra anche a fare gol, e quindi questo secondo me è uno stimolo ulteriore che dai a persone che magari come me che giocano da 26 anni e che se continui a dargli stimoli è chiaro che non si annoiano mai.
So, boredom hasn't caught up with Gigi. Provided their bodies allow it, players of all positions wouldn't mind going on and on and on. Players have egos, and if they think they're still good enough, they keep at it.
I actually understand why they don't want to stop. I can really relate to this, and I can also relate to that passion that just doesn't stop, and that motivation.
Buffon suffered just one single 6-month spell on the sidelines in 2010. With luck, he's avoided repeat injuries, but also by making use of modern recovery techniques.
Looking at these super careers that we can witness at the moment, for example, Cristiano Ronaldo, LeBron James, Federer, Tom Brady, or even Misty Copeland, we see that all these players have really a fable for sports science and recovery tools, and they surround themselves with the best stuff to optimize their recovery.
But unlike the seemingly eternally fit Italian, Julia Simic was not afforded the luxury of playing into her 40s. Let's talk about the main career ender, injuries breaking your body down. Julia Simic finally left the game at 32, but she had already decided to retire twice before. Like other top-level players before her, heavy injuries that hit early in her career eventually took their toll.
So when you're 21, and this was when I got my first call-up for the national team, I trained 45 minutes and then I had this injury, the ACL injury, and this is when you just think of making it back to the pitch as quick as possible. So I was rushing a lot through my rehab stages. I was back on the pitch after, I think, 5.5 months, and then probably that was too early because after 7 months I re-ruptured my ACL in that left knee, and I was out after that for another 1.5 years. 5 years later I was playing for Wolfsburg at this time, and I ruptured my syndesmosis ligament in your ankle, which also took a surgery after that, and that obviously breaks something in you.
Despite medical advancements, footballers' careers still can be brought down by heavy injuries.
The quality of the medical treatments got much better during the last years. The operation possibilities we have got much better. So I think the number of career-ending injuries get less and less. We always have to keep in mind that every injury is a mental setback. And the question you have to ask yourself is, how often are you willing to take on the fight to get back? If you get injured over time, it really gets really tough on the mental side to get back.
When I reached a certain age, with 28, 29, I could just not play pain-free anymore. So my last 3-4 years in football were just 50-50, like 50% on the pitch, but also 50% off the pitch on physio benches.
So obviously injuries take their toll, but they also pave a clear, if tough, path to retirement.
Waking up every day with that pain, I think also makes the decision a bit easier, because you just know, all right, your body is actually screaming to stop, and at one point you have to respect that in a certain way.
If the body gives up, it's a tough but healthy decision to walk away. Some players like Franck Ribéry do just keep going though, whether fit or struggling to stay on the pitch. They don't want it to end. The decision to retire is then essentially quitting a lifelong habit.
It's an addiction. Like, it's not nothing you just turn around and turn away from and just be okay with it.
That's why, for instance, Philipp Lahm's decision to walk away from competing for titles with Bayern shocked the football community, and he was already 33. Players don't usually stop while they're on top.
So there are so many emotions that you probably don't get as often in other aspects or areas of your life, especially not in the work life.
That emotional connection is also a reason Buffon is still going, even if it meant dropping down to Italy's second tier, then at the age of 43 with nothing left to prove.
E poi la vera verità è che io ho sempre giocato, sì, un po' per ambizione, ma molto per passione. E quando giochi per passione, quando giochi per ideali, e quindi tornare anche al Parma per me significa avere un ideale nella testa, cioè giocare e tra virgolette spendermi per delle persone, per un contesto, per dei tifosi che so che tengono tanto a me, mi vogliono tanto bene e io voglio bene a loro, e quindi per me andare a giocare da qualche altra parte non mi avrebbe dato queste motivazioni.
Buffon doesn't seem to want to let go. At 40, he signed up for a rotational role at PSG behind Alphonse Areola, and after that played second fiddle to Wojciech Szczesny for 2 seasons at Juventus. At Parma, where he's currently the starting keeper, he signed a new 2-year contract in February 2022 in his pursuit to remain forever young.
I think when you drop out, you definitely miss a lot of things like your team and coming to the dressing room and just being silly. Even with 32, you can just be, it's an extended youth somehow. You can just behave like they're 16 and 17 years old.
Some footballers are comfortable with the idea that it'll all end someday soon. Others keep playing, despite having nothing left to prove, addicted to the game and perhaps fearing what lies beyond. But nowadays, other players feel comfortable retiring younger. You just have to be prepared. Simic got into coaching and media early on. So when can players start preparing?
Actually, really early, just because I had tough injuries at an early stage of my career. I was out for 2.5 years at this time. Started doing my coach's badges back then. That was in 2011 and 2012. And obviously now I'm benefiting from being very active. I also started my studies at this time in sports science. So now I have my master's degree in sports science.
Retiring early, especially after heavy injuries, is much more accepted in the modern game. 2 male German coaches have really helped make it mainstream. Thomas Tuchel was forced into early retirement at 24 after injuries and took up coaching. He has since led Dortmund to a cup win and Chelsea to the Champions League title. Julian Nagelsmann retired even earlier at 20 while playing under Tuchel himself. He became Tuchel's assistant and then the youngest ever Bundesliga head coach, eventually moving to Bayern for a world record €25 million fee. Meteoric rises like these have changed perceptions as players are encouraged to do their coaching badges early. So there's a clear alternative to forcing their bodies to compete into their mid-30s as more and more young coaches are trusted with big jobs. The mammoth amount of money and media coverage surrounding football also allows players to use their brands to market themselves for almost anything and find jobs in front of microphones and cameras. Not all footballers start planning ahead for life after retirement, especially if they haven't been humbled by long stints on the treatment bench. But playing into your late 30s also requires its own unique sort of planning.
I think it's absolutely crucial to start living a professional lifestyle as early as possible, to educate yourself with knowledge about recovery, prevention, and longevity, and to really find out for yourself what really helps you and what doesn't.
Dedication doesn't always come naturally to players. Some start using sports science early, but there is also luck involved, avoiding injuries and getting a good draw in the genetic lottery.
No, non c'è segreto. Una motivazione, posso dire che sto bene fisicamente, non sono mai stato un portiere che ha giocato perché aveva forza o esprimeva forza. Sono sempre stato un portiere, secondo me, tecnico, un portiere che capiva il gioco e quindi questa cosa qua, secondo me, fa sì che io riesca a giocare più a lungo rispetto ad altri, anche magari perdendo un po' di forza, perdendo un po' di altre qualità.
Well, we know keepers have it a little easier, but sports science shows what is required. However, it can only go so far. You need to want it.
Look at Ronaldo, for example, as a perfect example, who's still the one who probably trains the most in his team, probably aware of what his body needs more than he was probably 10 years ago.
But not every player works that way. You only have to look as far as the other Ronaldo to see how differently careers can pan out between 2 of the best of all time.
If we look at the most successful players who maintain long career, they're absolutely committed to optimizing their recovery, to try out what's best for them and then sustain these routines over long term.
Nowadays, players have the tools and knowledge to optimize their fitness, but that obsession with health doesn't come easy to every player.
Whether there was a summer holidays, winter holidays, even at Christmas, you would think of, all right, should I drink? Should I eat that? Should I just sleep a bit more? It was always in your head to be prepared again for pre-season, for the next season, for the next clubs.
Even if some freak athletes have hacked their bodies, retirement isn't an exact science, and a lot of it is up to motivation, planning and luck. So when should a player actually decide to retire?
Once a player won't be able to help the team anymore, if it's in the games or during the training or spirit-wise, I'd say he should retire or find another club where he could still have a positive impact.
E quindi bisogna, secondo me, crearsi un contesto per dire io posso giocare ancora ad altissimi livelli se però lo faccio per un qualcosa che abbia un senso veramente.
I wouldn't say it was a pressure of age or reaching a certain age, but yeah, actually, if I could have choose, I would still play for another 5 years, and I would probably still play with 40 if my body would allow me to play and continue playing.
You may think the advancements in sports science make it natural that players can play well past their 30s nowadays, but that isn't necessarily the case.
I think the trend with the fixtures, the tight fixtures, the evening games, the travel demands, we should definitely take care of the players and take in consideration how high the demands of all these factors are really for the individual person. And I think, yeah, definitely the trend is not going in a good direction.
In the end, players have to weigh up all the factors and make the tough call, while agents, coaches and hangers-on whisper in their ear. Retirement will continue to be a tricky topic in football, especially with the many varied demands of the modern game.
Però credo anche, soprattutto io che ho raggiunto una certa età, ho una serenità veramente grande e una felicità interiore per quello che ho fatto, per quella che è la mia vita.
And would Julia Simic consider a comeback?
The passion is still there. I enjoy playing football a lot, once or twice a week, but I think it's nothing more left in the tank, basically.
For us non-athletes, retirement tends to come in our late 60s. For footballers, the decision to leave working life comes at almost half that age. But after that, a second life begins, near or far from the game.